headmaster of Prince Rupert's School in the summer term of 1964. The girls' houses on the main site were Collingwood, Howe, Rodney and Drake. Mountbatten junior boys occupied the house next to Raleigh. On the Fleager-dyke, Howe and Collingwood boys shared the same boarding house, as did Rodney and Drake boys.
I did arrive in the middle of the Easter holidays, so the site was entirely empty. There were no cars, there were no pupils, there was nobody in the classrooms, there was nobody in the boarding houses. So I think the thing which struck me most was the size of the barrack buildings the school was going to occupy, or the school did occupy, and also the great distance from Grenville, which was the administrative block, all the way to the boiler houses. It must have been a quarter of a mile.
How long was it then before you decided to make any major changes?
My desire to change, I was never full of educational ideas. There was very little to fix, and my motto really was, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I was extremely lucky in having Bill King and Monica Tebbs as deputy head and senior mistress. And I can remember that at the first half term, at our weekly meeting, I said to them, would they like to openly comment on how they felt the first half of the term had gone. And Monica Tebbs looked at me and said, are you looking for accolades? And I took that to mean that as far as Monica was concerned, the change wasn't too bad.
Well, in 1967, Miss Tebbs herself left, having been a supportive senior mistress for you for the first few years. Can you describe how this affected the running of the school?
Well, Miss Tebbs was an institution. She'd been at the school a number of years. I think she'd probably started as senior mistress with Mr. Pacey as head, and then had served through the entire headship of John Sharp. She was also an excellent teacher, particularly of English, and she always had the job of taking those who'd failed their O-levels on for a retake the following year, and her results were quite remarkable. But I wouldn't like you to misunderstand me if I said her leaving made no difference at all. And the reason was that Monica Tebbs worked so closely with our house mistresses. The three house mistresses, four at one stage, the three house mistresses fully understood what Monica Tebbs wanted. They agreed with her entirely, and they were quite prepared, without Monica Tebbs as senior mistress, to carry on the tradition which she had established. And the fact that there was no collapse, I think, probably shows the strength of Monica Tebbs. We had an outbreak, I think about 1966, of very serious head lice. And all the pillows and all the girls' berries had to go to be fumigated. Now the berries were something that Monica Tebbs favoured very, very much, and they were always worn to chapel on Sundays. But when the berries came back from fumigation, they had all shrunk. And it was obviously that berries were no longer going to be part of the girls' school uniform. And Monica Tebbs looked at me with a steely look and said, I reckon you did this on purpose. tremendously important to us, and we had a total of 155 for 550 children. And that will show one reason why Wilhelmshaven Prince Rupert School was so expensive. But it did mean that the high standards which the army wanted for the school were very well maintained by the Germans. We had some very skilled bakers, and when they produced birthday cakes and events such as the school officers' dance, the standard of the bakers, the butchers, the cooks was unbeaten anywhere else. There were also cleaners, and then of course there were the 9 labourers, there were the house matrons and the hospital staff. So one can imagine that all sorts of activity were undertaken by Germans for Prince Rupert School.
Can you give me your impression of the extremes of weather in Wilhelmshaven?
Well, I would mainly refer to the fact that on 2 occasions at least the sea froze. But it didn't make life so appalling as one would imagine, because the cold was dry cold. And if we had a lot of snow, we had 9 labourers, and these 9 labourers could clear the site in no time at all. And although on one occasion I think we had certainly 3 feet of snow, the clearance had been done almost before first assembly. My difficulty when it became so very cold in the winter was that the inner harbour in front of the school froze, and the pupils were always very keen to be allowed on the ice. I was very, very reluctant to allow the pupils on. But when I would see German cars being driven up and down it, I had to accept that the ice was stern enough to allow pupils onto it.
I was in How Girls.
Were you?
Yeah.
Were you homesick at all, Norma?
No, never. Mrs.
Never
Bishop,
homesick.
Mrs. Bishop seemed to take me under her wing to start with, but she wouldn't let me wear makeup even to the cinema
Really?
on a Saturday. Yeah, it was like, Norma Kelly, you're a nice girl, and so you mustn't wear makeup and you mustn't be influenced by all the other people. And she quite looked after me really. She was stern, but I loved How Girls.
Right. What about After Lights Out, Norma? Were you one of those
Yes,
naughty
we had.
ones?
Well, we had our little transistors.
Really?
They were little tiny little things then, and we would have them on under the bed, because I think Radio Luxembourg in that era,
Certainly.
which was never very good. You couldn't hear it very well. It was always crackly and fading out. But yeah, we used to listen to that.
Were you ever caught though? Because I'm sure you weren't supposed to be doing these.
Well,
things.
yes, I mean, our matron, in fact, I can't remember her name, but I can see her face. She would come and open the doors every now and then and say, be quiet, go to sleep. Yes.
What about your school uniform in those days?
School uniforms, mine was the blue pleated skirts, and of course we used to roll them up, roll them over and over and over on our waist, so we had a quite big thick waist just to have a nice mini skirt, and the jumpers were grey, and we used to have really big baggy ones in those days, and I remember I had big heavy shoes, probably quite sturdy shoes, which one pair I did lose sailing once, so that was quite nice.
All right. Interesting.
The beret we would wear on the back of the head, and then you would backcomb your hair and it would go right over the top of the beret so you couldn't see it, and spray it till it's so stiff and hard. I did have a gabardine raincoat which my mother bought from the NAFI in Berlin, and years later I told her that I actually never wore it because I took it to school, I put it under the mattress and told the teachers that I didn't have one, much to my mother's disgust. And I had to wear my duffel coat, which I became famous for my duffel coat, because that's what I wore for 2 years. I wasn't terribly academic. I think I just scraped through, middle of the road. But I think that just the whole experience of being at PRS, for me, was what made me, because I went there, I was quite shy, and I'd only obviously been to a day school in England. But mixing with all those people, and for some reason I was never ever homesick, it just brought out the best in me. As I say, I got very loud and obviously developed a personality of my own from being a very shy little girl, and it just gave me bags of confidence.
And you did a bit of sailing as well. You lost your shoes.
Sailing, yeah. We capsized the first time I went, and my shoes went, my school shoes, so I had to wear my shoes for the weekends.
We had constructed 7 of our own mirror dinghies with red sails, and to see these red sails out on the inner harbour was an activity which was not only enjoyable for those taking part in it, but also enjoyable for those watching it. And I was taken out by Bryn Evans's son, and at one stage he said, "Pull the rope," and I was a little bit slow in pulling the rope, so he said, "Pull the bloody rope, sir," and I did. The other great event of the games side on the athletics was the Milacarian Trophy, which was a trophy competed for by all English public schools, where the results of people's races was recorded during the summer term, and on 2 occasions the Milacarian Trophy was won by Prince Rupert School.
Well, you actually donated a few bits to our memorabilia collection, and I'm not quite sure where they came from.
Yes, my mother found them years and years later, so I gave them to Liz Bird, and this was the girls' clothing list, which was fantastic. And my mother, I remember she took me to the NAFI, and I had to have everything that was on the list. If the school said you had to have it, then you had to have everything, including 4 vests for the younger girls. And my laundry number, I remember, was A59.
Was it? So
yes.
that was a Howe.
Yes, Howe was A, so I was A59, so I remember that, yes.
A health certificate.
Health certificate. I don't really remember. I think these sort of things were sent to your fathers and your mothers, maybe for your general health before you started.
Smallpox, diphtheria. But of course we had to have those injections.
That's
the
right.
First day of school, didn't we?
Yeah.
Line up there with your
That's right.
arms like this.
At the sick bay, yes.
And did you have to be weighed and measured when you first started? At the beginning of each term?
Yes, and we were always checked. Our hair was checked, wasn't it, for nits?
Head lice, yeah.
And our nails were checked. And of course, Miss Tebbs never liked our hair to be very long. It must just touch your collar, and that was it.
That's right.
Yeah.
Declaration of income of parents of entitled pupils.
Right, because your father had to fill it in with his income and everything else. Because I think you probably found as well at school, it didn't matter what your family did it?
Not at all.
We were all army children.
That's it.
We were all, as they called, army brats, and we were all the same class, weren't we?
Right, yeah.
We were on the train all day from Berlin, and it was a laugh because we had the trains, obviously, with the old-fashioned trains, with the compartments and the corridors, and we would just run up and down the trains all day long. I mean, it was fantastic. We were literally on from the beginning to the end.
In those days, of course, you had to get through the eastern sector. Now,
Yes, when we left Berlin, it would slowly leave Berlin and then go through the eastern side, and then we'd have to stop. And we literally used to put all the windows down and hang out the windows, and the Russian soldiers were the friendly ones, not the East Germans, but the Russian soldiers, they would come up to the window and they would talk to us, and they would give us their cap badges and different things they had on them, just for anything English that we had to swap with them.
Prince Rupert School was founded in 1947 at Wilhelmhaven. Thus it's now the oldest of the 9 British families' education service schools in Germany. The school has some 550 pupils, almost equally divided between boys and girls. By definition, it's a mixed secondary comprehensive boarding school. There are some 42 staff here in Wilhelmshaven, both men and women recruited in the United Kingdom. The organization is comprehensive. This means that we hope to allow pupils study according to their differing ability in differing subjects. We also hope to allow them promote themselves as quickly as possible from one ability level to the next highest.
That was the headmaster, Mr. J.R. Meredith. Now a cross-section of the school's life, beginning with the academic side, followed by the boarding houses and ending with extracurricular activity.
Now, Karen, if you differentiate and put dy by dx equal to naught, what do you get?
Max or min?
And how do you tell the difference between the max and the min?
From the original equation.
Yes, that's right.
That was an example of teaching in 5.1. Now an example of teaching in 5.5. Rates and taxes. What are rates and taxes? To whom do we pay them?
Rates paid on houses. It's paid to the local council.
Yes, good. I think the frequent changes of school affect the less able children most. The able children will learn in spite of their changes, but the less able children find this unsettling.
The main difficulty is that there are frequent gaps in basic knowledge due to this moving from school to school, and this difficulty can persist throughout the whole of their mathematical career. In the comprehensive system, they're able to move from stream to stream as these difficulties are overcome, and this seems to me to be one of the main advantages of this system.
My name is Miss Whittaker and I'm head of the Commerce Department of Prince Rupert School. As you can hear, this is being recorded in the typing room. The commercial course here starts in the 4th year, and the girls have 8 periods of typing during the week. At the end of this year, it's hoped they will reach RSA Stage 1 level. At the moment, the girls are taking accounts in their 6th year, but again, we think perhaps we may change this and train them in office practice, a rather more practical subjects for girls of this age.
As part of our domestic science course, we occupy a small flat within the 2 large buildings of the domestic science department. While we're in the flat, we have the opportunity to entertain people and to do the normal everyday chores we do at home. And I think coming into the domestic science flat helps me in many ways. For instance, when I leave school, I've got a good idea of what kind of jobs I will do as a housewife and what housework is going to be like, cooking, things like this for later on married life.
No, you can't do it like that. You'll have to use far more effort. You can't get top notes without using a certain amount of effort. And do watch the long note at the end of the first line. You faded away. Now, we'll have something totally different. Let's go through the Calypso version of the Lord's Prayer.
Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name.
I like woodwork because I get more enjoyment out of it, and I get, more of a feeling that I can do it easier than any of the other academic subjects.
I'm in charge of the Technical Studies Department. We have a metal workshop, 2 wood workshops, and 2 technical drawing studios, and there are 4 teachers in the department. And in a comprehensive school of this type, naturally there's quite a demand for practical subjects, but the technical drawing in particular appeals really to boys from all streams and holds its own very well with any academic subject within the school.
In the teaching of science in the school, we find that our biggest problem is that the children are only here for a comparatively short time. And therefore, although the school is very well equipped to do science, we have to compress the O-level courses into 2 years, as otherwise they will not complete the course.
I teach biology in this school, and what we're doing at the moment is an ecological study on the sand dunes south of the school.
We classify all the plants and study their distribution, and it's just to gain an impression of life on the sand dunes itself.
My subject, geography, is only compulsory up to 3rd year level. This means that work before the 3rd year has got to perform 2 basic functions. The first one is to give people a general grounding in the subject, but it's got to be adequate
for the examination candidates who are going to take the subject further in 4th and 5th years?
We've had our language laboratory in PRS now since last autumn. It's one of the most up-to-date. It's a 28-booth lab, and we have 5 possible output sources. This is that we can program 5 different lessons into the 28 booth. The teacher can tune in or monitor any one of the pupils at any time without the pupil knowing what is going on. And if we listen to one now, it will sound something like this.
Der Fisch ist gut. Teuer.
Der Fisch ist teuer.
This is a first-year class in drama. In the 3rd term, we use music to express themselves in action and in sound. This is a piece by Mussorgsky called Pictures from an Exhibition.
English in this school covers a very wide range of ability, from A-level GCE to fairly low streams, and the difficulty is trying to provide a cohesive pattern of teaching throughout the whole ability range. Throughout the rest of the school, we try to put the emphasis on talking, reading, and writing in that order. One of the ways we try to do this is by having a strong drama department. This tries to give them fluency, confidence, and the ability to speak well with others.
Is it worth the waiting for? If we live till 84, all we ever get is through. Well, every day we say our prayer. Will they change the bill of fare? Will we get the same all through? Well,
Got the part of Oliver when 10 boys. They all workhouse boys at first, and Mr. Dyer, our producer, chose one of us to be Oliver, and I got the part. This play should turn out all right, by the way they're singing and that. I suppose everybody will enjoy it. I know I will.
get on, right!
That was the CCF getting on parade for their weekly Wednesday parade. Boys in the Corps sometimes go into a service career, but this is not what we're training them for. We're training them for adventure, for challenge, for a little bit of discipline, a little bit of personal smartness. Now, Richard, you know the boat very well. You can sail it quite well. Can I ask you now a couple of questions on right of way when you're sailing? Tell me about the rule regarding starboard tack.
Starboard tack. That's the sort of test that I have to pass to become a helmsman in the club. We have sailing every day, and at the weekends we have races. During the winter months we build boats and recondition the ones that are already in use.
Running round with the back on the toe.
As far as PE in the school goes, in the winter we've got gymnastics, of course, that the younger boys particularly more keen on, and we've got basketball and we've got football. And the girls have got the hockey and netball. In the summer we concentrate mainly on athletics, boys and girls, but we've also got tennis and swimming. Swimming takes a large part of the summer term activities, and in addition to this we have other broader physical activities like sailing, canoeing, horse riding and so on.
This is Radio PRS, and good morning to you all, everybody. We'll kick off first with a request from Dennis Rose of Bolton Boys. Would you like this? Well, I was just going through an introduction for one of our recorded programs in the Radio PRS. The studio is just an ordinary cellar, and we've hung up blankets to go and soundproof the room.
For what we are about to receive, may the Lord make us truly thankful. Amen.
My day starts at 7 o'clock when we get up.
We go and have a wash, and afterwards we come back and get dressed, do our room jobs, and then we go out for breakfast. At 9 o'clock we go for church or for assembly. Assembly, hymn and the headmaster say a few announcements, and then we go for our first period, breaks 11:15, and breaks 15 minutes where we go to Nelson. We have a bun and milk, and some days we have cocoa. After lunch we've got free time till 2 o'clock, where we go back to school for 3 more periods in the afternoon. And then from 4:10 we have free time. We can do anything we want, go out, athletics, clubs, when later on we can go swimming when the swim bath's open. And then at roughly 6:15 we go out for supper. And after supper we have prep for an hour, and after that we get ready for bed, have bath, shower, get washed. And then at 9:15 we're in bed reading, and at 9 o'clock lights out and we're back to sleep.
You've just heard a description of Mountbatten, the junior boys' house. The boarding houses are on 2 sites. Main site, which houses the girls' boarding houses, and Mountbatten, and the Fligedijk site containing the more senior boys' houses. Each house has some 60 boys or girls, representing a cross-section of the school, both in age and ability.
The life in a senior girls' house varies from a junior boys in that the bedtimes vary according to age. They work longer in the evening and go to bed later. They are allowed privileges which the juniors are not allowed. We try, so far as we can, to help them to grow from school children into young adults and to be prepared for going out into a world which, as perhaps as army children, they know very little about.
This is my first boarding school, and when I came here I was frightened at first, but after a while I got used to the routine. I got a good friend called Gail, and we put in for a room together, and we've been in a room together ever since. And my sister's coming next term, September. We're putting in a full room with Gail's sister, my sister, and Gail and I up in Top Flat in Collingwood.
From the physical welfare angle, should a boy or girl be feeling unwell, we have excellent medical facilities. He goes in the first place to the matron of his house, who sends him over to a daily sick parade where he receives treatment, or, if necessary, is taken into sick bay.
Good morning. Good morning. And what's the matter with you?
So first,
Go and sit down there, and we're going to check your temperature, sir.
As those 2 poor boys going over to our school sick bay. This is on the side of the dike, and we have 34 beds.
We are a co-educational boarding school, which to the outsider would appear to have more problems than I think we find. We're after all born into a two-sex world. We're going to work in a two-sex world, and it would be unnatural to me to imagine children growing up educationally in a one-sex world. We have our minor difficulties. We have to get our girls to understand that what would be acceptable behaviour from a point of view of boy and girl relationships at home in the evenings is not necessarily acceptable behaviour when we are in school.
The school has a prefectorial system, which means that certain more senior pupils are asked to undertake duties, mainly of a supervisory nature.
As head boy of Prince Rupert School, I'd like to tell you something about what it is to be a prefect here.
Generally, as prefects, we have to check on such things as school uniform to ensure that none of the pupils bring out their own variations on it. Corridor discipline is another thing that takes up a lot of the prefect's time. Prefects, in return, virtually, for these duties, they have certain privileges above the sixth form. Perhaps one of the most enjoyable is the granting of a prefect's room. In this we can have tea every evening, and we have supper on a Sunday. This is not just a social gathering for us, it's also a place where we can get together and work out policy, compare notes, and if necessary reprimand each other.
You've heard something of the life at PRS, the academic side, the boarding side, and the activities side. This, I hope, represents something of what education is all about.
The whole system of education at the moment is leading towards the exams which you're going to take at the end, and one hopes that with these exams you'll be able to get a better job or start off higher in the job that you want to do.
It's to help me get through my exams so that I can go out and get the job that I want with the qualifications that I need.
For me, education is the creation of an environment in which each individual meets a constant stream of ideas, particularly new ideas, and exercises his mind to the utmost of his ability. Education is comprehensive.
Mike and Jackie, you met at Prince Rupert School, started going out with each other in 1968, and you've now been married for 30 years. What can you remember about your first meeting? Have you got...
Yes, we were in fancy dress.
Yeah,
it was a Comedy Court social.
Yeah, social in the hall.
We went to Evoluon.
To where?
Evoluon in Eindhoven.
Phillips exhibition in Eindhoven. It looked like a huge mushroom or a spaceship on top of a pedestal.
And that was my 16th birthday present from my mum and dad.
Yeah. Was that in school holiday?
No,
no, it was
that
term time.
There was a trip. Yeah.
Oh,
4 girls and 20-something boys.
Yeah. So it's a bit like a sort of a TWA reunion.
It was
now.
Yeah,
then.
Yeah. They actually gave us a lot of freedom on that trip, the teachers. They really did trust us.
Were you prefect and monitor?
Mike was head boy and I was...
You were head boy?
Mm.
Oh, so you really were on your best behaviour. So what was life like in a girls' boarding house in 1967?
Bubbly. We all seemed so close. Everybody looked after everybody else. If some of the girls didn't get tuck boxes, we shared. It was nice. I can remember having to polish the floor in the corridor once.
With the bumper.
With the bumper.
Yes.
We were playing with that. We were all standing on it and riding along.
Can you describe that bumper? Because I've got vivid memories of the bumper as well.
Long pole with a great big heavy weight on the end.
Yes, it was.
You put cloths under. No ball bearing. No. You put cloths underneath it and then whizzed it backwards and forwards.
Yeah. So you had that in the boys' house as well.
Yes, we had that in the boys' house as well.
And there's one chair at the end of the corridor because I was on the ground floor. And we used to take turns sitting in the chair and be pushed along the corridor. That's before I came monitor.
So what about house rules and things? Did you keep them in order? Were the rules set out? What sort of things did you have to observe?
I can't remember. Oh, skirt length, mascara, coming down for the gong at breakfast time, and one of the house tutors rubbing your eyes. You've got mascara on. Unroll your skirt. We used to roll them up in the 60s. We used to roll our skirts up here like helmets.
We also used to go, because I was in the swimming team, we used to go and look after juniors when they went on trips. So we had a couple of trips.
What, the inter-school trips?
Yeah.
To the other schools?
Yeah.
Did you ever go on any of those, Jackie?
Yes, I did. I can't remember where though. I was in the hockey team. And I was also a captain of our girls' swimming team.
The sports facilities were very good at the school, weren't they?
They were excellent because we joined clubs so we could see each other after school. So we did ballroom dancing, badminton,
judo.
What did we do? Just, for the after-school activities.
Yes. was it necessary to make changes in the accommodation for the pupils?
The age range of pupils at Prince Rupert School was a little bit uneven. If you were as a soldier or an officer being moved to Germany and your children were aged about 16, intending to go into the sixth form, there was greater thought that it would be better to leave them in the school they'd been in, and they could probably live with a relative or a friend. And so we had fewer older pupils than a normal school would have had. And with 4 boys' houses, I felt that there were too few seniors in each house, and it would be better to only have 2 boys' houses, Lawson and Shackleton, and have more seniors in each house. And I think it worked quite well. We had also introduced a boys' house for the younger age group, Mountbatten, and this, under Brian Rigg, had been such a success that there was pressure to consider doing the same for the junior girls. And Rodney, as a girls' house, ceased to exist, and Blake Girls was introduced as an equivalent of Mountbatten. In 1969, I was appointed schoolmaster student at St John's College, Oxford, and the Ministry of Defence granted me 1 term's leave, and I chose as the subject I would be studying the changing sixth form. And I sat in Oxford thinking up bright ideas without any relevance to the actual running of the school as to how the sixth form towards the end of the 60s and in the early 70s would be run. And I decided that the sixth form ought to be more democratic, and the responsibilities of the sixth form ought to include more people. So rather than having all the responsibility in 1 boy and 1 girl as head boy and head girl, each prefect in turn was to be head boy or head girl for a fortnight. The system was a total disaster. All my bright thoughts in Oxford came to nothing. And although we'd started it in September, the following year, June, it was abolished, and we reinstated a head boy and a head girl.
Jackie, you arrived at the school in 1971.
Yep, 16th of October 71.
Oh right, you've got it all down there in your diary. And what house were you in?
Collingwood.
Collingwood. All right. Terry, you were at school a bit longer, I believe. You started in, was it 1969?
End of
1969.
Yeah. We were definitely in top flat together.
What
one term?
What is top flat? Because that is.
It was in the blocks at the end of each block.
What, at the front?
At the front, yeah. The teachers had their flats. The first floor, well, the ground floor, as you call it, and second, the first floor. Top flat was on the top.
And you had a main room with 3 or 4 beds in, and then on the sides you had little annexes with single beds in, and that was like a self-contained flat area.
Is this because you were senior girls? Or?
No, it was just
an extension.
Yeah,
the rest of the.
I think they chose the ones to go in there. They
yes,
be suitable.
Oh, right.
You had to be well behaved.
Where was Collingwood Girls then in those days?
Right at the end.
The very last
block.
What teachers can you remember? You've got vivid memories.
Miss Godfrey.
Miss Godfrey.
Yeah. Miss McLaren. Miss McLaren. She was so scary. She was only a little lady, and she had a very strong Scottish accent. And yeah, she used to we walk, a little crowd of us walking, and she'd, girls, come here.
Because her flat was underneath us, so whenever you made a noise, she used to come up and she used to shout at you.
Yeah. But we had such respect for the teachers. I think that was the main.
Yes.
We did. I mean, they were. I loved Mr. and Mrs. Marmon. I mean, Mrs. Marmon took me for typing, didn't she? And Mr. Marmon, because he was our sports. He was the.
So I mean, Miss Agate, like the picture on the
hockey
photograph. She took us, didn't she, Miss Agate?
Yeah.
There was then Mr. Rigg.
Yeah, and there was Mr. Precious.
Oh yes.
You had a Mr. Precious, did you?
Mr. Precious, yes. And he he used to play the organ or the piano for somebody singing in the
Miss
morning.
Fordyce, our house mistress.
She was nice, yeah.
She was nice.
And the matron, or the sister, I think it was, of the medical centre was Miss Bones.
Yes.
Miss Bones, yes. She was
remember
Miss
her,
Bones,
yeah.
yes.
But it's funny because as soon as we start talking about teachers, we remember all the others.
Yeah,
as well.
you do. There was and Miss Murray.
Oh yes, she took us for
English.
English.
Yeah.
And there was another lady.
Mr. Irwin used to take us for geography. Oh, and Miss Jellyman.
I came over here as a home economics teacher in 1969. My name was Jellyman in those days. And stayed here for 3 years until the school moved down to Rinton. Originally I was going to move with the school, but I'd met my husband in the meantime and we decided we didn't want a weekend relationship, so I left the school and started teaching in a German school.
At boarding school, I mean, this has taught us a lot, and it's made us have a good start in life, I think, because you're disciplined. You're told you have to get up, you know what your chores are in the morning, you know that you...
And we did it.
There's a fine line, even you knew if you went over that line, then, you'd get detention. I remember having detention for something, and I can't remember what it was, and it's probably in my diary.
I don't actually think I ever got detention.
I wasn't allowed out for the weekend, and I can't remember what it was about now.
Really?
It'll be in my diary somewhere. And it wasn't that we were frightened of them, we respected them.
Yes, I think that was
because they were also good fun as well.
They were, yeah.
I mean, Miss McLaren,
she
got
was-
married, didn't she?
She was a German. She was.
She was
lovely.
lovely.
She was just
And Miss
strict.
Godfrey I liked
And
very
you
much.
did have respect for them.
Then school started at 9.
Or thereabouts.
Yeah, then we had break at time.
And that was
cocoa.
Or cocoa, I suppose.
Yeah, and buns. But in the summer, it was jungle juice. Remember the jungle juice
No.
in the tins? The ration packs that the soldiers used to have. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And it was like a sherbety type thing, and it was very sour.
Oh, where did you have your break, morning break?
We used to go,
back at the house, but that was in the cellar, towards downstairs in the cellar.
Yeah, but some of us stayed in Churchill.
You must have had a long walk if you're at the other end of the school.
We used to live around there, because I can remember being in Churchill with our board friends. We used to go buy the coat hooks.
There was a change of great importance in the 1970s, and that was the introduction of the sixth form club, which was held in the cellars of Fisher, which was the needlework department. And Friday evening was the night on which the sixth form club met. And rules were relaxed for the sixth form, hopefully in gaining more responsibility for them. Smoking was allowed and beer was allowed. The position of the sixth form club was, I think, a change which did in fact work and was appreciated by the seniors.
So the sixth formers had a club, did they?
Yes, down in the cellar. And we used to get invited, didn't we?
We did, as fifth formers,
Yeah.
and then every now and again. Well, weekends were the time to again socialise, and we used to go into town.
We didn't we? Didn't on morning,
We
Saturday,
did on a
didn't we?
Saturday, yeah, actually we did. I just remember that, yeah, well done.
And you went into town?
We used to go on town
Yeah.
walk.
Oh yes.
What, right
We
into
used to
the
be.
town?
We used
Yeah.
to go to get our pocket money.
2 Deutschmarks.
2 Deutschmarks. Yeah. And then we used to go into town and
Socialise.
Yeah.
Well, this is the key word. So
Should we tell you what we used to do? Because bear in mind we were older.
But don't
so
tell
we
the
were
teachers. Don't tell the teachers.
No, right. How old were you? Just
Well, we were.
remind me.
Hang on. How old were we?
15?
4th and 5th year.
15, 16.
15. Yes. We used to
Yeah,
go to the
15,
pub.
16. Yeah, we did.
What? Not the one outside the school gate?
No.
You went a bit further.
Oh, we went into town.
I seem to
have no
remember being in
idea.
school uniform.
But
we
yeah.
didn't, did we?
No.
We wore civvies, I think, but had to wear
Some
item.
item of.
So we used to wear a scarf, didn't we? And then take it off.
Was there a sort of an aura of discipline at
Oh,
the
much
time?
more. Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
More so
I've
than in the...
I've since learned that an awful lot of things went on behind our backs that we didn't know about. But I think that was the main difference to teaching today, was the fact that we didn't know about it. It was always done with a certain amount of discipline.
But behind the scenes.
And if they were caught, then I suppose you could say they took their punishment like a man. The houses had town walk, and it came up about, for the different houses, it came up about once a month, I think, if I remember rightly. And then they were allowed to go into town for a couple of hours.
Yes.
Can't remember exactly how long they were allowed to go. They had to wear their school uniform.
Yes.
The Wilhelmshaven, people in Wilhelmshaven were always horrified by the fact that they had to wear their school uniform when they went into town. But actually it was a very sensible thing, because a lot of the pupils didn't speak a word of German. And if anything happened, everybody knew exactly where they came from.
There has always been talk of people being expelled from the school. Were you aware of any being actually expelled?
Yes, oh yes, yes. We had problems. I'm not saying it was perfect by any means. That would be ridiculous. That would be fantasy. We had problems with drugs, and there were a couple of boys expelled for drug usage. You get to know the children very, very much better than you ever do in a day school. You have the opportunity to do much more ambitious projects with them. When I think about the shows that we put on in Churchill, we could never have done that in a day school, because we wouldn't have had the time to practice. It would have been much more difficult to get all the pupils together at the same time to do rehearsals. We had brilliant opportunities for doing costumes and so on and so forth. On one occasion we had a wedding to show the children or the pupils what a wedding was about, that it was more than just a pretty dress and lots of flowers. Derek Taylor, who was the chaplain at the time, he did the church side of it and prepared everything in the religious knowledge lessons. I was home economics, so we did the wedding cake and the buffet, and they made the wedding dress and the bridesmaids' dresses in needlework. I helped a bit with that, but my side of it was more the wedding breakfast. One of the activities that would never have taken place in a day school, because it would have been logistically impossible, was the fact that we had a flat between the two domestic science rooms, and the pupils used to spend a weekend in there. They used to go in on Friday evening and stay there over the weekend and come out then on Sunday evening. They had to plan all their meals, they had to plan tasks to do in housework type of thing. They had to make shopping lists. The shopping list had to be given to the quartermaster. The quartermaster delivered exactly what they'd ordered and nothing else, so that if they'd made any mistakes, if they'd forgotten the meat for the main course, then they had to invent something else, vegetarian dish or something of that sort. They had to invite a member of staff. It didn't matter whether it was me as home economics teacher or whether it was another member of staff, to a meal. And they had to do a little dinner party, and again, the usual entertainment, making polite conversation and decorating the room and the table and so on and so forth. And that was something which they enjoyed very much, this little bit of independence within the school.
When I first started there, obviously mini skirts were coming in. We used to have to put our hands down on our sides, and all the skirts used to be fingertip length plus an inch.
Yeah.
And that was it. And that was long. And of course there was Dyke Walk, which was Sundays, and that was.
We used to meet up with boys. The 7th of November, 1971. Compulsory church, yuck, because we had church in the morning.
It was compulsory.
I've got here this afternoon, my English is disgusting here, but this afternoon, me, Terry, Norman and Greg, that was Norman, Greg, they used to call him Pod, didn't they?
Greg Hanley.
And
Norman.
Used to go out with Jackie Bell.
I did.
Anyway, went for a walk on the dike. It was great, lovely and windy.
Now, sport had always played a very important part right throughout the school. Did it still remain important when you were there?
Yes, it did. Because we used to, we played hockey together.
Yes.
And we were both in the first 11.
This is a school, school first 11, so you must have been really, very good.
Well, we both obtained our colours.
On November the 12th, it's a Friday, 1971, and I've got an entry here, because the boys played football at the same time.
Yeah,
it was called a hockey festival, but the boys played football. And I've got here, got on the bus and sat in front of Norman, and dusty. Behind, Glenn and then Steve sat in front. The journey wasn't bad. Arrived at, I think it's 1 o'clock. Played matches and drew 1, lost 2. We must do better tomorrow. The meals are yuck, so are the dorms, so is ham.
Have you got any particular memories of Mr.
We used to
Meredith?
call him the Kopf, didn't we, the head?
Yes,
Kopf.
we did, yeah.
Head
All
Kopf.
heads were called the Cop.
Were they?
Yeah, they all
Oh,
were.
really?
This has come across.
Head Kopf.
Oh,
Yes,
really? Oh,
yes.
right, there you go.
Must have passed down.
The head.
He was always very aloof and
a bit scary.
I don't think I've ever
No,
spoken to him.
I thought it was a bit. It's funny. I thought it was a bit scary. You know, you look at him and he's quite tall and used to look down. And, you know.
Did he wear a gown?
Yes.
He wore a gown.
He did wear a
Walking
gown.
around the school grounds with a gown.
Yes.
Flapping in the wind.
I think he was a quite a nice man.
I'm
But
sure
we
he
didn't have a lot
was.
to do with him.
No.
Because the deputy was that Mr. Rigg.
Which was pretty good, really, because it meant that we never got into trouble.
Yes.
Have you got sort of many memories of Mr. Meredith, either of you?
Yes, obviously I had regular meetings with him, so perhaps I had more contact with him than most.
So yours was sort of a liaison meeting to
Yes,
discuss
yes.
what was going to be
Yeah,
happening.
yes, what he would
day to
like
day.
to happen,
Yeah.
anything that was going to occur during the week, where he wanted cover. You know, basically we acted as policemen, I suppose.
Yeah. Did you had a team of prefects?
Yes.
Who worked with you?
Yes.
Who was the head girl? Can you remember?
Jane
her?
Little. Jane Little.
Right, well, Prince Rupert School played a big part in both of your lives, and apart from bringing you both together, what aspects of the school helped form you into the people you are today? Jack,
It's made us more independent, I think. You had to grow up because you couldn't keep going to mummy and daddy. So you were taught to be independent, to manage money and friendship.
I think through life, I've found that we are much more tolerant of other people, strangers that come in, than neighbours or people who live close by us who've been there all their lives. You know, they will get upset at the slightest thing, where we will tolerate a lot more, and we will usually get on with everybody. You know, there are very few people that we can't get on with in some form or another.
The medical centre, we used to go to the dentist to get our verrucas checked out. Because we always had verrucas. That was at the back of...
Is that by the bunker?
Not far from the tennis court.
The hockey photograph. I mean, I can name them all on there now.
Can you?
Miss Agate at the end. Marion Stracklin, Hugh, Caroline Sparks, Anne Bailey, Alison Clark, Miss Godfrey, Rosie Lyons, Sue Cook, played the guitar, Carol Poole, Jackie Pooler's sister, me, Sue Proctor and Bonnie
Shaw.
Yeah, amazing. And have you met up with many of those?
Caroline.
Anne Bailey we met up with.
And we did at the last one, Miss Godfrey.
Rosie
Lyons,
Marion.
Well, she married Mark Pepper, didn't she?
Yeah. And they're still together. They met at Wilhelmshaven.
Yeah.
And married, I think, the year after she left.
I came from teaching in a school in Camden Town in London and came over here to Prince Rupert School. The first thing that astonished me was going into a class and the pupils standing and waiting for me to say good morning. And when I met my husband, he was a member, well, we still are, members of the German Life Saving Society. And I was able to take groups of children from the school to the life-saving, to the swimming pool for life-saving, and they were able to do their German life-saving certificate. I was in Drake House. We were 4 members of staff in the houses. In the girls' houses, it was always single members of staff. We had duty every 4th day. We were on duty, which meant getting up, seeing the pupils were up, getting them over to breakfast. The matrons took them over to breakfast, but we were responsible for seeing that they were all out of the house. Then it was checking the rooms after breakfast, seeing that they all got off to school, having meals with them. We didn't have to go over to breakfast with them, but we went over to lunch and supper with them. we used to be fetched by the head girl, and she escorted us over to the dining room. Social life was not bad at all. When I came over, I arrived with 2 members of staff and a member of the nursing staff who were all round about my age. And we made a very definite pact, so to speak, that we were going to go out, that we weren't only going to live in the school. So we created a social life for ourselves outside the school. That's how I met my husband in the end. But the social life inside the school was enjoyable as well, but rather apart from a normal social life anywhere else, because you knew you were only going to be here for a limited amount of time. And the whole situation was fun and we enjoyed it, but it wasn't real life.
The rumour that the school was to close had started in 1947, the same year as it opened. And in fact, during the 50s, you would have staff arriving at the school, a new appointment, to be told on the way that the school was going to close. By 1970, there was a Labour government, and the costs of BAOR came under scrutiny. And it was decided that Prince Rupert School, which cost more than Eton or a Borstal, would have to be closed, and it would be better to build a day school near Minden, which was a centre of population as far as the army was concerned. The closure of the school didn't in fact result, when Rintel was opened, in all that much saving, because if I understand it correctly, and nobody's ever denied it, whoever worked out the would-be costs of Rintel to set against the costs of Wilhelmshaven forgot to bring in the cost of the daily transport. And transporting 780 pupils up to 50 miles a day, both morning and evening, was a considerable cost.
And I think it wasn't until the spring term 72 that we were actually told or thought that it was real. I think that was
the
taught.
term before it actually closed. So
bearing in mind this other school had been built, I suppose. It must have known for
a long time.
But it didn't. Perhaps it just didn't dawn on us that they were actually going to close the school.
Well, when did it sink in?
I think I mean, there's all the packing going on, wasn't
there?
Yeah.
I think it must have been the last term. I can remember there was in the blocks that we were there was we had cellars which had all the ironing boards and and all of that sort of stuff. We just couldn't do your ironing. But at the end there was this horrible black steel gate, door
with a hole in it.
Yeah. And
remember
it was
those?
scary.
With 2 handles on?
It was scary.
Yes,
we had all sorts of,
haunted, didn't we?
Yeah, we reckon it was. But I've got photographs of all the packing crates.
Have you?
Actually, in the cellar, yes.
The 8th of June 1972 saw the farewell to the Germans, and it was a day of great importance, with the Commander-in-Chief, Sir John Hunt, coming up. We presented the Germans, the Oberstadt Director, with a silver plaque with the crest of Prince Rupert School on it. We had a chapel service in the morning, then we had a lunch in the library, then we had speeches in Churchill House, and refreshments in gym number 1.
There was an awful lot of obviously organisation going on.
But we didn't
know
how to do it, did we?
No, that's right. And when obviously all the parades and everything that were going on, and we had a visit.
I know we did.
We had that visit from that chap in the helicopter.
Landed on the field.
I've no idea who he was, but he landed on the field, and we were all paraded to see him.
So you can remember that the helicopter was connected to the boys
definitely.
parading.
Yes.
There's some sort of passing out
Yes,
parade.
because he viewed the cadets, didn't he? That's what I remember now.
I know there were tears.
Tears.
And you could have sunk the whole school site, I think, in the tears that from everybody, more or
Yes.
less.
Was this at the
Boys,
station?
girls,
Yes.
at the station and the night before.
Yes.
I think there was such a, I don't quite know how to describe it. People felt so much part of the school and the school life. Pupils, staff, the German staff particularly.
That must have been quite a wrench for
Yes.
them, because presumably they were all out of work at that point.
Oh yes, yes, most of them were. I mean, I think they were kept on for a while for clearing up and so on. There's two things, well, there's a number of things, but the two things that stick in my mind is my first day when I walked into the dormitory, because they were brick walls that were painted over. And my mother, I was in a two-bed with Andrew Goodman, and my mother, I remember her coming and saying, "You're not staying here, you're not staying here, it looks like a prison, you're not staying here." And I thought it was awful, you know, I thought, oh dear, you know, this looks terrible, but it wasn't. It was good fun. And the other thing I remember is sitting up top flat and looking out, and it was winter, because I remember there were icicles. I seem to remember icicles hanging from the roof. And it was icy on the inside of the windows, wasn't it? It was always like
Of the double glazing.
Well, did we have double glazing?
We did.
You had
Yeah,
double
yeah,
glazing. I
yeah.
remember ice.
Yeah.
It must have been on the outside. But I remember that being ice. But looking over on the lake, what we called the lake, and
The
sun,
fantasy.
the sun shining on it, and it, you know, when it's going icy, when you think there's going to ice form, it was like that. And that's what I remember.
Now, what about the very last day?
Do you know, that's a blur. I can remember standing outside Collingwood in my school uniform.
We always used to stand in a big circle, and that's what everybody else did, and it was always, you know,
So good,
so long,
so good. Yeah, that's right.
You know, and it was, and I think we were all crying, and there was a lot of hugging going on and everything else. But then it was.
We always did that though, at the end of that, didn't we?
It was really, yeah.
We always did that at the end of the term.
That's right.
But
we all had allotted times that we had to go to get the train or whichever form of We went on buses transport to the station. Yes.
The school train left at 9:50 and I decided to travel on it. I did this more as a mark of thanks to the staff who had been so wonderful. It was a very long day, right down to Hereford, and I only got back at 8:10 p.m.
We were sat on the train going home, and it was then that it suddenly dawned on me, God, this is it, you know, I'm never going to see some of these people again. You know, and it was quite emotional really, because you're saying goodbye and you're thinking, you know, I'm not going to see some of these people, we're never going to go back. You know?